Vigara and his gang stand in a clearing and announce that spring is about to arrive. Almost 6 months have passed since Wendell and his squad reached this village. Vigara's body has become toned and strong. He has finally had the opportunity to eat proper meat. He now feels much stronger than before. He expresses his gratitude to the boy for the magic that keeps the provisions from spoiling so quickly. Wendell, perched behind the man, explains that it is a magic of preservation mixed with the power of death. He is grateful to Gulam for all his support, and he himself devours the meat as if he has never eaten enough. Not at all like a child. Igara is asked how Basti is doing. Her appearance is a true work of nature, worthy of admiration. It's a pity that Wendell is still too young. If he were older, he would be offered several girls from the village, just so he wouldn't leave. Igara involuntarily recalls her conversation with Zadiris. Since he and Wendell are still training, it means he won't be able to leave before spring, and then, who knows, he might stay until summer. But it's not up to Gulam to decide his fate. Igara considers him a worthy young man, and sincerely hopes that the training will bear fruit. But then, after completing his training, he will still leave, and this thought makes the man's heart ache. Zadiris laughs. You don't hear that from her very often. But she shares his feelings. The Elder also wants the hero to stay, but sooner or later he will decide to leave anyway. No force can keep him here. Igar watches as the ghoulie clash with the wolf-like monsters. He shouts advice right in the middle of the battle. He wants to finally get the meat they've been so lacking lately. Wendell asks if he is going to intervene, but Igar is convinced that the students need real combat experience. Besides, these creatures are clearly no match for them. Among the monsters, sisters in armor flash by, using special combat techniques against their enemies. Sally and Rita have learned to speak and fight in unison, clearly dividing roles between themselves. Sam, watching the battle from the sidelines, is pleased. Even after death, he can see his kin fighting. In the heat of battle, Rita faces off against a third-rank kobold. She strikes him, but he blocks the blow with his shield. A second monster approaches from behind, and Sally takes it on. She cuts down one, then turns her weapon on the next. One of the ghouls arrives from behind and finishes off the enemy with a final blow. Igar says, the time has come. He is about to attack the leader of the kobolds to break the spirit of the entire squad. Suddenly, one of the monsters lets out a roar and the other kobolds immediately respond. It seems to be their last resort. A desperate call. Wendell senses someone approaching, and at that moment, the leader of the 5th rank kobolds appears before them. Enraged, he growls at his opponents. Igara realizes that this one is much more dangerous than the others and is about to call Wendell, but the ghouls decide to handle it on their own. The man takes a running start and swings at the monster. The leader responds in kind. The sisters realize that they need to go to the aid of the others and quickly deal with their opponents. Bone soldiers who have been upgraded to the 4th rank appear nearby, and the sisters ask them for support. The bone wolf knocks the monster off its feet and, leaning on it with all its weight, sinks its teeth into its flesh. Watching from the sidelines, Wendell wonders if they should also rush into battle. But no, the ghouls are doing just fine on their own. He notices a vulture soaring in the sky and thinks that he himself would like to fly like that, freely, without looking back. Wendell summons sand golems from the ground. They close in around the crowd of monsters and suck them inside, winning the battle. The ghouls are amazed. For them, such a move is a dirty trick. Meanwhile, the fighting Vigar laughs and says something. Wendell, sitting on the man's back, realizes that he needs to hold on a little longer. The shaking is much stronger than he expected. In the heat of battle, Vigar dodges the leader's blow, and the leader notices the child's legs on his opponent's back. But this delay cost him dearly. He made a mistake, which Vigar immediately took advantage of, bringing down a stone cut on his enemy. The enemy's blood tastes bitter, but they will gladly cook and eat the meat. Hearing this, the leader of the kobolds suddenly begins to swell up. His arms and legs grow right before his eyes. He throws himself at Vigar again. Wendell realizes that now the enemy clearly outmatches them in strength. He mentally returns to Zadiris' lessons. She taught him attributeless magic. He needs to concentrate his magical power in the form of a sphere and direct it at the target. Such magic strikes any enemy. It has no attribute. Wendell tries to repeat this technique, but the sphere scatters right in the air. He still has a lot of work to do on attributeless magic. For the hero, it turns out to be much more difficult than it seemed at first. All this time, he has been exclusively engaged in death magic with attributes, so his difficulties with attributeless magic are quite understandable. Zadiris encourages the boy. It took her 3 years to master it, so there is still a long way to go. But Wendell is impatient. He has not yet completed his training, but decides to jump off Vygar's back anyway. The opponent looks at Wendell in confusion, and Wendell suddenly spits right on his shoulder. This instantly enrages the leader. He swings his axe, but the weapon suddenly slips out of his hands. Confusion engulfs both of them. Wendell and the leader look at each other, and at that moment, Vygar delivers the final blow, knocking his opponent down. Head. The head of the leader rolls across the ground with a dull thud. Igar kicks the headless body to the ground and proclaims, "Their leader has fallen. Now all this prey is theirs to eat." The kobolds scatter in panic, and the ghouls rush after them. The sisters rush after them, upset that they didn't manage to help. Dampier uses his magic again. Huge hands grow out of the ground, grabbing and scattering the remaining kobolds. The ghouls are satisfied. Today's catch is rich. Igar asks what Wendell has done this time, and he explains that he has turned his saliva into poison with his spell. The man thanks the hero. Thanks to him, they managed to defeat such a strong enemy and not lose any of their own. But Igar is worried. Did the boy harm himself, since the poison was in his mouth, even if only for a moment? Wendell's tongue is slightly numb, but since he got rid of the poison right away, everything is fine, although an unpleasant aftertaste remains. Igar smiles and offers to remedy this with some excellent meat. He orders all the spoils to be loaded and already anticipates a hearty dinner, confident that Wendell will enjoy the kobold meat. The boy admits that his training is not progressing as quickly as he had hoped, which means he will have to stay a little longer. A little later, he eats the freshly cooked meat with gusto. Wendell watches him, smiles, and says that if the boy eats well, he will grow up to be big, citing Vygar himself as an example. Basti notes that from an early age, he swung an axe as well as an adult. If the boy starts training now, by the age of 3, he will be the spitting image of Vygar. Hearing that they are talking about him, he immediately wants to join the conversation, and the sisters in armor join him. The girls regret that they are deprived of the opportunity to taste the meat. Wendell thinks to himself, living here is probably not so bad. When else has he had such peaceful days? And yet, staying here forever is not an option. Zadiris asks what's wrong with him and offers him a piece of meat. Looking at her, the hero notices something. Zadiris says she doesn't feel like eating. In old age, you don't move around much, so your appetite is much smaller. Wendell sees the shadow of death hanging over her and realizes that she will hold out for a few more days, but the outcome is inevitable. He asks her to talk to him face to face. Zadiris thinks that Wendell is going to leave the village and invites him to talk at her house. She picks up the boy and carries him away. The hero does not know how to begin this conversation. He can literally see the presence of death, which is relentlessly drawing her in. Life may be prolonged with the help of death magic, but would Zadiris herself want that? The girl suggests talking about her studies first, before moving on to the main topic. To put it bluntly, Wendell has no talent. Surely the boy himself has noticed that he learns more slowly than others. Although he has been studying for 6 months, his unattributed magic is still at the first level. He is just an ordinary person who knows how to use death magic. Wendell has no talent in the usual sense, but he has an understanding that more than compensates for it. From the perspective of the people of this world, the hero is merely reproducing what he learned in his past life. It is something foreign, not his own, but he has a colossal supply of magic. If he devotes himself to study, it won't take him long to become a great magician. Wendell looks up at her, and Zadiris says she wants to spend as much time with him as possible. She understands that he has his own goal in his travels, but asks him to wait a little. The hero thinks. She knew about the approach of death and shows him such trust, asking him to prolong her life. He asks her to trust him and suggests that she lie down, take off her top, and begin treatment right now. The girl does not understand him. Is it really necessary for him to learn something from her? Wendell says there is no other way, and Zadiris obediently lies down. The boy is going to rejuvenate her a little. He plunges his hands into her stomach. There, using the transformation of the spiritual body, he examines the state of her organism. Wendell asks her to bear with him for a moment. It will hurt a little. He imagines his hands dissolving and spreading like liquid throughout every corner of Zadiris' body. He finds no abnormalities. It's just old age. No diseases, no injuries. The hero only possesses the magic of death, which means he can only accelerate or slow down the death of cells. Embarrassed, Zadira squirms, while Wendell studies her status. He sees the enormous amount of magical power she absorbs. The girl covers her mouth with her hands so as not to give herself away with a sound, but she cannot hold back her heavy breathing and frequent sighs. One of the tribesmen decides to check where the elder is gone, and approaching the door, sees Wendell doing something between the legs of the reclining girl while she moans and breathes heavily. Ghoul freezes in shock while Wendell finishes the examination. He has used up all his mana and wants to sleep a little. He falls down helplessly and falls asleep. The girl thinks, if the boy had explained to her even a little bit about what was going on, he wouldn't have passed out like that. Suddenly, fatigue overwhelms her too. She lies down next to Wendell and falls asleep in his arms. Outside, at the door, the shocked ghoul still cannot understand what he has just seen. Later, Zadira eats meat with gusto and talks to Wendell. Since he possesses the magic of death, it is not surprising that he is capable of such things. But still, she would have liked him to at least warn her in advance. The boy thought that she herself knew about this technique. The girl is still glad that the hero is not going to leave yet. He still needs to figure out attributeless magic. Zadira suggests continuing training right now. But the hero's mana has not yet fully recovered. He asks the elder to practice rejuvenation magic after training. Zadira doesn't mind, although she has no idea what the outcome will be. Yesterday's rejuvenation was supposed to roll back her age by 10 years, but it required a huge expenditure of mana. Wendell reminds him that she herself ordered him to use mana more efficiently so that his reserves would gradually grow. Is this really rejuvenation magic? It drains mana to the very bottom. Wendell confirms that his mana exceeds 100 million. After 9 days of practice, her reserves should grow significantly. Rejuvenation requires the most mana right now, so Zadira suggests they work together. She already dreams of rejuvenating herself by 200 years. Days pass. The hero practices magic with his students and simultaneously uses the rejuvenation technique on the elder. Zadira is getting better and better. Now she can easily pick fruit from trees. The girls notice that the elder has started to behave strangely. She has changed in appearance and has even become a little more attractive. Before, she had the look of an ancient old woman, but now she looks quite young. They remember. It all started when Wendell did something to her. The Vandalieu girls, who have returned from hunting, ask what they are talking about, and one of them reports that the elder and Wendell have been sitting at her house all day. Vandalieu believes that there is nothing to be done about it. The boy wants to learn as quickly as possible. Another girl asks, is that really the only reason? There are some rumors going around. The same Ghoul Bernarda who is spying on the elder's house declares that the girls know nothing, but he saw everything with his own eyes. The girls pounce on him and demand that he tell them everything. He tells them everything he saw, and the girls are completely confused. They begin to discuss how clever he is. They had noticed before that the boy went to the elder's house every night and did not leave until morning, but they did not expect this. Bernarda asks them to speak more quietly and begs them not to tell anyone that they learned this from him. Vandalieu is horrified. She never expected this from her own mother. She decides to go and ask directly. She thinks she lacks feminine charm and considers herself a burden to her mother. And these rumors somehow concern her daughter as well. Rita and Sally conclude that Wendell is clearly aiming for the aristocracy, since Zadira is the most influential person in the village. During training, Wendell finally manages to use attribute-free magic, although it takes him quite a long time. Zadira praises him and suggests they finish for today. She picks him up and offers to carry him, but Wendell breaks free. He is already 2 years old and can walk on his own. The girl objects. 2 years is very young, and last time he tripped over a stone and was so upset by the fall that he completely refused to prepare for rejuvenation. Wendell notices that Zadira has rejuvenated to an age that matches her current appearance and decides that this is enough. At the same time, her mana reserves have grown. The boy goes ahead to help the girls with their work and crush acorns with Vilda. At the same time, he will practice magic. Zadira wishes him luck and asks him to ask for help if he gets too tired. Sitting down next to the other girls, the hero uses magic to grind the acorns. Vilda approaches Wendell and he reminds her of her promise to name the child after him, Honor. It turns out that the child was never born, but Vilda promises to name her next child after him. Wendell is surprised and the girls suddenly realize that not a single baby has been born in the village over the past year. The boy asks Bastia to talk to her alone. He asks why the girls are so upset that no children are being born. She explains that for the ghoulie, unsuccessful births are the rule rather than the exception. Miscarriages in the first months of pregnancy are commonplace, and only 1 in 5 children is born safely. Could this be due to the characteristics of their race? Ghoulies lead very active lives, so it would be logical for them to have many children. But since he arrived in the village, he has not seen a single child. He thinks he could help. With this problem, the ghoulie race has existed for 100,000 years. But should he worry if no one has asked him for anything? Basti says there's nothing that can be done about it. Not a single child has been born in the village in the last 10 years. The mother's magic is powerless here, and the girl asks if something can be done with the hero's magic. He answers for Zadiris. He is willing to try to solve the problem of fertility among the ghouls. She is amazed. It sounds good, but is Dampier really going to kidnap women of other races and turn them into ghouls through a special ritual? The hero is surprised. Is such a thing possible? It turns out that it is, but the ghouls have never done it. Although it might work with adventurers, the risk is too great. Zadiris would be happy if Wendell found another way without attracting unnecessary attention. The hero promises to do everything in his power and mentally notes, it is not necessary for his mother to know about the infertility treatment. A little later, he sits on the floor next to the reclining Vilda. The hero examined her and realized that the ghoul's sperm cells die too quickly before they can reach the egg. Most often, either the sperm or the egg dies before fertilization. This explains why the ghoulies cannot conceive unless they engage in intercourse daily. The girl gets up and asks, can the hero really just protect the sperm and eggs? In a sense, it is quite possible, with the help of magic. Vilda is very happy, but the hero still needs to figure out how to prevent miscarriages. However, there are currently no pregnant women in the village. Vilda promises to help the hero if she manages to get pregnant. Thanks to the magic of death, which keeps sperm and eggs alive, Vilda and the other girls in the village soon became pregnant. Winter has come. Zadiris and Wendell are sitting in the house. Bastia comes in. She notices that it is thanks to the boy that Vilda and the other girls in the village are literally glowing with happiness. However, due to the weak viability of the fetus, the ghoulies had many miscarriages. Nevertheless, this threat was also eliminated with the help of magic. Zadiris thanks Wendell. Now, thanks to him, the village will be able to welcome new residents. Dampier is glad he was able to help. He plans to watch over Vilda and the others for a while longer. Now all that remains is for him to create a magical item that will solve this problem. Then the ghoulies will be able to have children even after he is gone. The elder believes that this will not happen anytime soon. To create a magical item with the attribute of death, the boy needs to study alchemy. Wendell learns this from Zadiris, but it turns out to be more difficult than mastering magic. The hero asks not to worry, he will manage. He asks Bastia if she is sure of her decision, because while he is here, she could have a child. But the girl refuses, she doesn't want to yet. If she gets pregnant now, it will be impossible to test Wendell's magical items on her later, so everything is fine. The hero agrees, but isn't she worried about her age? Bastia isn't concerned. He doesn't mind her appearance, even if she ages a few more years. Zadiris thinks it sounds as if her partner is this boy. Wendell says that it will take at least 10 years, so he asks Bastia not to argue and to get pregnant. The girl does not intend to have children with the hero right now. She's looking for some compensation for the experiment and wants to ask Wendell to be the father of her second child. The boy cannot take on such responsibility, especially in his early teenage years. Besides, he is not human, but a Dampier, something between a vampire and a dark elf. He is not sure if he can have a child with Ghoul. Bastia assures him that there is nothing to worry about. They were born of the goddess of life and are capable of producing offspring with members of other races. Their blood mixes without any problems. Zadiris has no objection to Wendell becoming the father of her great-grandson. Unexpectedly, the elder asks the hero to become the first partner of his future daughter, if she ever has one. Bastia is indignant. She is already 290 years old. She needs to think about her age. But Zadiris feels so young that she is quite capable of having a couple of children. Bastia continues to quarrel with her mother, while the hero stands silently aside. Somewhere deep in the forest, a group of adventurers has clashed with monsters. The man warns his partner Katia. Two are coming up behind them. The girl turns around, swings her sword in an arc, and cuts down a goblin with a Kobold sword. She doesn't understand why these monsters are working together. The man isn't sure, but he suspects that someone has appeared who is capable of uniting them all under one banner. Could it be the king? No one knows, but they sense that something very dangerous is approaching them. A deafening battle cry rings out behind the team. A huge horde of orcs rolls out of the forest. They attack the people. One of them, Rickon, raises his shield and shouts to his comrades, "Run!" Katia watches in horror as his bloodied shield flies away. Somewhere else, the army of orcs bows before their lord, Bugigan. One of the army reports to him, there are not enough females. He asks permission to capture the ghouls. Then they will be able to attack the village so that no one can escape or survive. Until then, there is no need to take unnecessary risks. The fighting power of the ghouls will not cause any major problems, but the Ghoulmaster ruins everything. Even if the monsters have numerical superiority, it will be useless as long as she is alive. Bugigan asks, "Is that ghoul dead?" One of the monsters pushes forward an old dog in a cloak. He replies that she is still alive. Bugigan is furious. The dog predicted that she was about to die of old age. That is true, but for some reason she is still hanging on. Something happened in the village that delayed her death. The Lord, enraged, cuts the creature in half. He wipes the blood from his sword and orders the dog to be fed. A monster named Bubobio appears. He reports to his father, the Lord. They have returned and captured someone alive. It turns out that they have captured 4 adventurers, 3 of whom are women. Bubobio shows the Lord 3 bound girls. The monsters rejoice. The Lord is pleased and, as a reward, allows his son to choose any of them. He chooses Katia and the man is offered to be sent to, be eaten. Wendell suddenly senses something. He asks everyone to gather by the trees. There is something important that needs to be said right now. The boy announces to the Gulliams, a horde of orcs is preparing to attack their village. Although the attack is still far off, the enemy is already preparing for it. Wendell received this information from the spirit of the very dog that was killed. Zediris explains that the boy can talk to spirits. Such is the nature of death magic. Besides, he has no reason to lie to the Gulliam. The villagers are gripped by fear. 300 orcs plus 100 goblins and kobolds. Their village has barely 100 inhabitants. Do they even stand a chance in an open battle? Another ghoul believes that there is nothing to fear. Divide the enemies among themselves and they will prevail. Vilda asks if he has counted her among the fighters since she will have children. The other pregnant women echo her words. Wendell agrees. Pregnant women have no place in battle. Besides, the Ghouls don't know the enemy's level of training. Bastia suddenly speaks bluntly. Neither Veigar nor her mother can defeat the noble orc. One of the Ghouls is indignant. Does she really think he could lose? Bastia suggests that the mother ask the ghouls from neighbouring villages for help. This is the most reasonable option. Even the elder alone cannot change the outcome of this battle. The man asks him not to stray from the topic and says that the boy will have to fight the orcs himself. Dampier replies that everything is fine and tries again to explain his idea. Vigara interrupts him again and asks him not to be stubborn, but Wendell stands his ground. Finally, Ghoul can't take it anymore and growls at Dampier. This is a battle between the ghouls and the orcs, and it has nothing to do with Wendell. He objects. It does. All the villagers have become his companions, friends, and family. Darcy, watching her son, cannot contain the warmth in her heart at these words. Vigara is embarrassed, and turning away, asks, what can the boy really do in a place like this? First of all, Dampier has 3 bone beasts, a ghost bird, and an ice soldier, as well as Sam, Sari, and Rita. All of them are at least 3rd rank, and that's a compelling argument. While the ghouls go to other villages, Wendell will be safe. In addition, the skills of charm and death will come in handy among the ghouls. Zediris asks Veigar to leave everything as it is. He wanted the best for the boy. Basti and Vilda support the elder. Wendell and his team have long been like family to them, and the same goes for the other races. So Veigar has no right to say that the boy is a stranger here. The man says that later he will personally make sure that the hero is ready. Zediris smiles. The chief has given his approval. She asks him to share his plan, but the hero says there is nothing special about it, and suddenly dumps a pile of armor and magical artifacts in front of everyone, obtained before arriving in the village. Wendell had no plans for all this stuff, so he wants to give it all to the ghouls. Zadiris examines the equipment and notices that there are some very high quality items among them. If so, they will be able to fight the orcs. The items are valuable, but Wendell is adamant, especially since he got them almost for free. And for Vigar, he has a special battle axe from the skeleton general himself. The man accepts the gift with surprise and joy. Suddenly, Vigar declares that Wendell should become king. Basti agrees. After all, everything they have now is thanks to him. Zadiris, who has approached them, confirms their words, and the rest of the ghouls say in unison, the boy is the most suitable candidate. He is a leader who shows the way to the light. The hero is confused. He is a Dhampir. If a representative of a foreign race becomes king of the Ghouls, will the inhabitants of other villages accept him? Zadiris believes that if he were human, resistance would be inevitable, but since he is a Dhampir, everything will be fine. Moreover, Wendell said that he has the ability to strengthen his followers, which is ideal for the king of the Ghouls. The boy thinks about it. Any monster with the title of king possesses this ability. Under its influence, the king's command becomes stronger than usual, and its numbers also increase. Could ghouls also fall under this? Influence. The hero is still unsure whether one skill is enough to become king, but Zadiris has no doubts. Wendell was the one who solved the ghouls' fertility problem. He opened up their future and set them on the path to prosperity. Isn't that what a true leader does? He never thought that solving the fertility problem would turn out like this. Finally, he agrees to become king, and the ghoulie burst into cheers. Shouts of joy. Sam congratulates the gentleman, and the sisters in armor swear to do their utmost until the very end. One of the men picks up the boy and puts him on his shoulders. He suggests immediately organizing a celebration in honor of the birth of the new king. A little later, the hero tells Darcy everything. He is going into a deadly battle, but there is nothing unusual about it, so he asks his mother not to worry too much. Darcy doubts that there is a single parent who would not be concerned upon hearing such news, and yet her son has always walked on the edge. If he tries hard, he will succeed. She asks Wendell to stick with everyone else and not overdo it. The boy smiles and agrees. Somewhere in the distance, a girl with a sword walks away in complete solitude. Her face shows no emotion. Suddenly, a goblin jumps out of the forest at her, but the girl doesn't slow down, piercing him through with her weapon. The goblin falls dead, and she continues on her way. A horde of orcs appears on the path. The girl calls them weaklings and throws her sword right at their feet. The son of the orc leader Bubobio reaches out his hand to her. The girl ghoul sits on the throne and admires her jewelry. Such beauty. This is exactly the result you would expect from her hands. Two men stand aside and discuss in hushed tones whether it is already possible to approach her, but decide to wait a little longer. Suddenly, other ghouls burst in and eagerly ask their mistress, Treya, to make them shields and armor. She furiously demands that they wait just a little longer. Besides, there's no need to ask her every time. She'll do it anyway, as soon as she's had her fill of admiring the new decorations. Suddenly, someone's scream interrupts her again, and Treya finally loses her temper. But the ghoul announces that they have collected more metal slime. She perks up and demands that it be brought to her immediately. In her hands, she holds metal slugs. They combine the properties of both liquid and metal, and in her mouth is gum that behaves like both rubber and gum. The girl wonders, what to make this time? Weapons or armor? But her thoughts are interrupted again by the cry of a girl who has just run in. She announces that a strange carriage accompanied by 5 ghouls is approaching them. Moreover, it looks a bit like undead. Trey suggests that the ghouls from another village have subjugated the undead. She immediately orders all the village warriors to gather and take up defensive positions. A little later, with an armed detachment behind her, she meets the arriving carriage and asks what they want in her village. Vigara, who has climbed out of the carriage, wants to talk. They now have a common enemy. Ghoulie and other villagers have already agreed to act together. Treya thinks for a moment and asks for details. Wendell, who suddenly appears right in front of Treya, is going to tell her the details. The girl's warriors freeze for a moment at the sight of the small child, and suddenly all kneel before him. Treya does not understand why she bowed before the small child, but suddenly senses that he is definitely stronger than her. The hero turns to her awkwardly and explains that he was chosen by the ghouls as their king for this task. The girl is surprised. How does he know her name? It turns out that he heard that the ghouls flock here in search of her armor. Treya is a master armor maker, unmatched by any ghoul. The girl takes this as a compliment. Meanwhile, the ghouls who came with Wendell whisper in admiration. What a king they have. The boy did not expect them to fall to their knees just from talking to him, but he also bows and asks Trey's village to join their ranks. The hero does not know if this can be called a reward, but he is ready to offer something in compensation. Means to solve the fertility problem, and items to extend the shelf life of provisions. Treya and its inhabitants are amazed. Is such a thing even possible? If everything Wendell says is true, then Treya will gladly take his side. She thinks to herself, she will raise this king of ghouls to the very top, expand his domain beyond this cursed place, and earn herself glory as his closest ally. Treya never dreamed that such an opportunity would come her way at the age of 260. Sam, watching the conversation, smiles to himself. His master still enjoys the sympathy of mature women. Darcy notices Treya's hidden intentions, but still considers it useful practice for his son. A little later, the girl, who has encountered a horde of orcs, finds herself in their captivity. She sees the monsters chasing other captives. One of them suddenly falls. An orc grabs her roughly by the hair, pulls her to her feet, and swears at her. After that, Babobio knocks the heroine to the ground, rips off her clothes, licks her face with his tongue, and rapes her right in front of everyone. One man sees all this with his own eyes, and begins to feel sick from what he has seen. The butler enters with a tray of tea and asks if everything is alright with Luciano. After catching his breath and wiping his face with a handkerchief, he asks to call the Viscount. He has an important message. Luciano asks him to wait in the room. He sinks onto the sofa, still unable to calm down from his memories. He takes a cup of tea from the table. A few sips bring him back to his senses a little. The man recalls his conversation with the Vicomte. Luciano reports that his living dead have safely infiltrated the orc village. The Viscount sitting in front of him does not understand what this is all about. It turns out that these are undead creatures created with the help of the magic of the attribute of life. The undead are practically indistinguishable from living humans. Their hearts and lungs work, but they are considered undead because they have no soul. At the same time, they look no different from the living. However, it is impossible to make its face express emotions. The undead speaks only in a flat voice. This is noticeable to humans, but it is perfect for deceiving orcs. The Viscount asks how reliable the information obtained in this way is. Luciliano asks him not to worry. The undead shares all 5 senses with the spellcaster. In other words, it can accurately convey everything it has seen and heard. The Viscount is pleased. This is very convenient. This way, the information will be preserved even if the undead are destroyed by the orcs. It seems that the Viscount made the right choice. It's Luciliano's job. The man asks to find out if the rumor about a noble Orcamese parts is true, and if so, how many monsters are under his command. Finishing his tea, Luciano thinks about the horrors he had to go through to obtain this information. Suddenly, someone outside shouts his name loudly. The breathless Viscount Bern Balchers bursts into the room and asks if the reconnaissance was successful. Luciliano reports that the undead he commanded were captured by a medium-sized detachment under the command of a noble orc and taken to their village. So this orc really does exist. The Viscount asks how many there are. Until then, Luciano had thought that there were at least 2 noble orcs, one commanding a medium-sized detachment, the other being the king of the village. It turns out there are 1 or 2 more. The army consists not only of orcs, but also of goblins and kobolds. The total number of monsters is about 500 to 600. The Viscount is shocked. They say that the strongest of the noble orcs are capable of killing even dragons, and here there are 600 monsters to boot. Even if all the forces on his territory were mobilized, his reasoning is interrupted by Luciliano. Noble orcs, including the king, are not superior to humans. 200 adventurers of classes B, C, and D could handle this task. But even so, the Viscount cannot deal with this alone and decides to negotiate with Marshal Palpapek. Luciliano reports that the orcs are planning to launch an attack at the onset of summer. Apparently, there is a group of monsters in this devil's nest that do not obey them, namely the Ghouls. This means they still have time. The Viscount thanks the man for his work. He promises to pay the reward through the Adventurers Guild. The man bows and thinks to himself. Finally, he has recouped all his travel expenses. In this country, the Elder Church is too influential, and the use of undead is restricted here. Finally, he will be able to go to the neighbouring state of Orvam and find a suitable city to live in. The Viscount interrupts his dreams and asks him to take on the next task. Luciano is confused. The Ghouls squad dons new armour. Wendell asks Gudon, "Does anything feel tight? Is it comfortable to move in?" He replies that it's a little tight in places, and the boy uses magic to awaken the armour, adjusting its shape to fit Ghul's body perfectly. Trey, who is watching this, is amazed. She has never seen such a way of trying on armour before. Dampier explains that the armour was originally designed for humans. Without such adjustments, no one can use it. Finally, Gudon is satisfied with his armour and thanks him for his help. Wendell asks the next person to come forward and sees a whole line of ghouls in front of him. Treya asks Vilda, "Does the king really do these things himself?" The girl replies that Wendell does a lot for them. Before that, with the help of golems, he built a whole bunch of houses in one day, as befits a king. But shouldn't the ghouls themselves take care of all the routine stuff instead of him? Meanwhile, Bastia appears before the hero in armour. It's quite tight on her, not surprising since most armour is forged for men. Treya smiles. Since Bastia always hunts with men, men's armour is just right for her. She smiles back. Treya looks good for someone whose appearance seems to be designed specifically to attract men. The ghouls don't understand the aura that surrounds these two. Vilda explains, "Once, Bastia came to meet Wendell, who was supposed to return with Treya, and upon entering, found him sleeping peacefully in her arms, pressed against her chest. Since then, they have met like this every time." The ghoul is amazed. Are they really fighting over a 2-year-old child? Meanwhile, Bastia asks Treya if she is still capable of fighting at her age. She replies that she has put her gift into blacksmithing, and that is how she has earned her position. So, the little girl, who was not even given birth, had better just keep quiet. This upsets Bastia. She exclaims in a fit of rage that it is Wendell who will give her a child. Treya is shocked and immediately asks Dampier, "Is it true?" He replies that it is true, but not in the sense that she imagined. But the girl is no longer listening to him. In a rage, she lunges at Bastia. Bastia laughs. Is Treya really old enough to play with children? Maybe she should behave her age. She retorts that since she was originally human, she behaves as if her mental age matches her physical age. Now Bastia understands why she is the way she is. Treya doesn't immediately understand what she's talking about, but then she looks down at her own chest. Embarrassed, she excuses herself. They're not saggy, just big. But the elder calmly replies that she has neither muscles nor breasts, so what is there to argue about? A little later, the ghouls and Wendells gather for a war council to discuss tactics against the noble orcs. They now have almost 200 ghouls, while the orcs have about 600. There's nothing they can do about it. The orcs have already wiped some villages off the face of the earth, so gathering this many fighters is already a stroke of luck. The hero admits that with such a disadvantage, an open confrontation is not advantageous. But with his magical items and excellent armor from Treya, they will try to level the playing field. It will still be extremely difficult. Igara asks, "Can Wendell create golems with magic?" The hero has thought about this, but there are too few stones in the dense forest to create them. A sand golem might work, but it is unlikely to withstand an orc, and a newly created undead creature would not be of much use. From this point on, the focus is on tactics, not on increasing numbers. We need to think about how to use what we already have. We need to catch the enemy off guard. The village of Goulet is protected only by a wooden palisade. It won't last a second against the orcs. However, the monsters' fortifications are no better, so a surprise attack will make it difficult for them to defend themselves. Bastia adds that she wants to rescue those who have been taken prisoner. Dampier agrees and says he has already devised a plan to free them. After all, being a hostage is not an enviable fate. The girl asks about the traps that the ghouls might run into. The hero is ready for this question too. After finishing his reconnaissance with the help of insects, he tried to draw up a map based on the data he had collected, a difficult task. The hero unfolds the map in front of the ghouls and they immediately rush over to look. They don't understand what it is or why it's there, and Dampier realizes with surprise that the ghouls have never seen a map before. Treya explains that they don't use such things and need additional explanations. Wendell is upset. It seems that his efforts have been in vain. A little later, Dampier sculpts a model of an orc village out of a mud golem, and the ghouls understand it much faster than they did the map. The discussion of the plan continues. After they rescue the captives, Wendell will give the signal for a general attack. But what to do with the noble orc? Basti says that if her support strengthens Vigar, who has the highest combat power, then they will be able to defeat the enemy, gaining 1 or 2 ranks. Vigara agrees and asks them to leave the orc with them. He promises to deal with him quickly. Basti turns to the boy and asks him to take care of himself. His life does not belong only to him. The hero will take care of his own protection. He needs to stay alive for the plan to increase the birth rate among the Ghouls. Besides, he still has unfinished business. The Ghouls decide to make their move in 3 days. Wendell folds the map when Treya suddenly addresses him. She asks him not to be upset about the map. Compared to the mock-ups, it is drawn almost perfectly. The hero thanks the girl and is surprised. Can she read maps? Treya agrees. After all, she used to be human. Wendell is suddenly struck by a memory of Zediris' words about a special transformation ritual. The goblins prepare a cart for an outing against the orcs. They reach the village under cover of night. 2 goblins are on duty at the watchtower. The sentries suddenly hear a sound coming from the forest. Turning around with their bows at the ready, they see no one. Suddenly, the wooden palisade begins to fold into a huge golem, which demolishes the tower along with the goblins. Wendell announces that the first stage is complete. This eliminates the need to break down the wall and at the same time opens up an attack from all sides. Now the ghoulie have a slight advantage. Immediately, the orcs appear. Wendell had hoped for a little more time. He doubts that the wooden golems will last long and turns to Zediris. She turns to her warriors and asks, "Are you ready?" The ghouls respond unanimously. The strengthening magic has already done its job. Then Zediris takes a deep breath and unleashes a terrible roar on her army. The ghouls respond with a roar of their own and rush into the attack. One of the orcs, a 5th rank general, attacks the wooden golem. Suddenly, the ground beneath his feet begins to shake, and he hears a fearsome roar behind him. A ghoul is rushing toward him. He doesn't have time to react. The shield hits him right in the face, followed by the ghoul, a 5th rank warrior, who cuts down the monster and wins the victory. The hero turns to the other warriors and asks those whose mana is almost depleted to step aside and recover. He directs the warrior to him and replenishes his magical power. Mana transfer is the most useless of the non-attribute spells, but with Wendell's mana reserve, he found a use for it. The ghouls, inspired and overflowing with mana, are ready to rush into battle again. Now they will attack wave after wave, as planned. Dampier, sitting in the cart, asks Zediris to call him if something goes wrong, and tells Sam that it's time to begin. The cart, along with the undead, moves forward. A group of goblins and kobolds appears right in their path. Wendell doesn't even have time to open his mouth before Sam, his eyes burning, declares that they will break through them. The monsters are terrified by such force. The wagon sweeps through the crowd of goblins at full speed. Suddenly, a new group of orcs blocks the road. Wendell thinks it will be better to drive around them. He wants to tell Sam this, but Sam isn't listening again and declares that he understands everything. Safety first. The hero tries to explain that he meant something completely different, but Sam is already turning the wagon directly toward the crowd of orcs. The monsters swing their axes at the horses, but the weapons pass right through them. The orcs are confused, and the wagon sweeps through the crowd. Sam is thrilled. It refreshes him, and his strength returns. Wendell believes that he can gain as much experience as he wants, but asks the spirit to drive the cart a little more carefully. Dampier notes that thanks to Trey's improvements, Sam's attack and defense abilities have increased, almost as if he had been promoted in rank. The bone bird accompanying the cart lets out a piercing cry. Enemies begin to surround them. Then the sisters in armor enter the fray. They cut down the orcs with their weapons. Immediately, a bone beast lunges at the monsters. Its breath puts the orcs to sleep. The bone soldiers then attack the remaining orcs and cut them down with their swords. The carcasses of the defeated monsters are dragged toward Wendell. Now they have 200 souls at their disposal. The advantage is on their side. Sam is convinced that the outcome of the battle is already decided, but the hero warns that they must not lose their vigilance. The noble orc has not yet emerged. Meanwhile, Treya silently prays for the victory of Wendell and the other warriors. She asks that as many ghouls as possible return home alive. Suddenly, Vilda appears before her, and the girl shudders with surprise. She couldn't sleep for a long time and went out to get some air, and then she saw the praying girl. Vilda laughs. It's surprising that Treya is worried about Wendell, the elder, and even Bastia, with whom she constantly argued. She was curious. Does Treya really have such a terrible personality? Vilda thinks Treya is strange. She behaves like a child, with that hairstyle, a fan in her hands, and she speaks differently. Treya replies that it should seem strange to natural ghouls. Vilda doesn't understand what that means, so the girl explains that a special ritual was performed on her. Once upon a time, the ghouls attacked her crew. Vilda realizes what she has heard and assumes that Treya hates them. She just got a little carried away. Treya sends Vilda to bed. The child needs rest, but she asks to hear a little about herself. Treya agreeing, she says she can tell how she, the weakest ghoul in the village, managed to take the place of the elder. Vilda sits down and begins to listen. The girl will start with her childhood. Her father was a good blacksmith. That is why she became interested in making armor from an early age. The girl recalls how, as a little girl, she worked at the anvil. Little Treya runs up to her father and asks him to look at the incredible thing she has made today. Her father turns around and sees his daughter holding a huge axe. He tells her that little girls shouldn't be forging giant axes. He suggests she take up cooking, but she finds it boring. Suddenly, a little boy runs into the room. Treya's brother, Theo. Her father starts scolding him, calling him lazy. He nods at the axe and asks why his son can't do something like that. The boy snaps back. If he can't do it himself, then his father should give the workshop to his sister. The father is upset. He asks Treya to go help his mother. A few years later, due to pressure from the local city mafia, his father could no longer keep the workshop afloat. He sat for hours, staring at one spot, his face gloomy. His daughter tried to cheer him up. Everyone appreciates his armor, so sooner or later, everything will work out. Unexpectedly, the blacksmith suggests they go for a walk together. The girl happily agrees. They walk together through the city, and suddenly, two men appear in front of them. They grab Treya by the arms and examine her. One of them says to the blacksmith, his daughter is exactly as he described her. She will fetch the highest price. The man promises that everything will be fine with the workshop now. Treya doesn't understand what they are talking about. Are they really selling her? Her father turns to her and says, she undoubtedly has talent. She has long surpassed him. The person who was supposed to inherit the workshop had long been chosen. But because Treya turned out to be too good, her brother Theo lost all desire to try. Her father says that this talent should not have gone to her. The girl just wanted him to praise her. Later, Treya lies naked on the bed with her hands tied. The man leaves her, satisfied that she is indeed as hot as he was promised. Humiliation overwhelms the girl. She cries, but the next guest is already waiting for her. Sometime later, Treya sits in front of the mirror and applies lipstick. She has no intention of spending the rest of her life in this place, which means she needs to take action. Dressed up and smiling, Treya meets the next man. He is glad that the girl looks cheerful today. It finally seems that she likes her job. Treya laughs and, moving closer, stabs him with a knife. She climbs out of the window using a sheet and runs away, farther and farther, to a place where no one will ever find her. Treya ran away to start a new life. Wandering through the forest, she unexpectedly encounters 3 male ghouls. They surround and grab her. A little later, they lead the girl to a pool of dark liquid. One of the men cuts his palm with a sword and pours his blood into the puddle. After reciting some kind of spell, they grab Treya and throw her into the dark sludge. They dip her in again and again as she writhes in pain, sinking deeper and deeper into the darkness. When she comes to, she is amazed that she is alive. Ghoul appears before her and asks how she feels. The man says that the ritual was successful and that she is now a ghoul. The girl doesn't believe him and asks why all this is happening. The ghoul explains that it is necessary for reproduction. There is a shortage of women in their village. They did this to her because she happened to be nearby. Now Treya must bear many children for the ghouls. The girl is in despair and does not understand why this is happening to her. Why can't she just live in peace? After that, her life turned into a new hell. Only this time, there is nowhere to run. Even if she did escape, there is no way back to the human city. As a former human being deprived of the magical abilities of the Gulyam, she was needed by them for only one thing: to bear children. There was no other choice. Exhausted, Treya stands next to Gule in front of the slain beast. This is her food for today. She runs her hand over the carcass and suddenly says, "It would make good armor." Ghoul asks if she can make it. It's not easy. There are no tools. But Treya will think of something. Ghoul asks her to try, and Treya gets to work. She cuts up the carcass and makes armor for the man from its skin. He puts it on and says, "Excellent armor. Good work. The girl suddenly remembers how she made her first shield as a child, a shield. When she brought the work to her father, he praised her and called her a genius. Treya stands in front of Ghoul and suddenly starts crying. A little later, another Ghoul approaches her and asks if she could make something for him from today's spoils. The girl gets back to work and makes a shield. The monster is pleased and thanks her. Over time, more and more men turn to her with requests to make armor from various materials, until finally, all the Ghouls around her came to respect her. One day, the Elder called her over to talk. The effectiveness of the Ghouls' hunting had increased significantly thanks to her armor. Now they can even stand up to adventurers. The Elder is grateful to her for this. Even the equipment for ordinary work exceeded all expectations. As a reward, he offers to grant her any wish. Treya has known for a long time what she will ask for. She asks the Elder to appoint her as his successor. He promises to think about it. Leaving his office, Treya encounters the girls from the village. They are indignant and tell her not to get carried away. She is just a slave. Treya is not skilled at moving deftly or hunting. She only knows how to forge armor. She is a useless Ghoul. But Treya is not bothered by this. Moreover, in Ghoul society, a woman's status is determined by the number of children she has given birth to. The situation of these girls is unenviable. All the men in the village have their eyes on Treya. If this continues, their position will be undermined. The girls are angry. She has taken all the men for herself. Trey says that if they continue in the same vein, the guys may start to treat them with hostility. There is a better way, if they want to get a man. Treya promises to teach them a special technique for winning men's hearts, if only they become friends with her. They give in and agree. Thus, the girls solve the problem with the other women in the village. 100 years later, her fame spread far beyond her village. Ghouls from other villages flock to Treya for armor, paying with food and materials. The population of the once dying village grew by 60%, and Treya, being the weakest Ghoul, became the Elder. After listening to the story, Treya looks at Vilda, who is in complete admiration. She says, Treya is cool. She had come such a long way, from a helpless human through hard work, and had become a truly great Ghoul. Treya is embarrassed. Ghouls have no tact. She doesn't really care, but she doesn't like to talk about it and keeps to herself. However, she did talk about it with Wendell, without going into detail of course, because he's still a child. The hero's response was brief. At first, Treya took it for coldness. He said he couldn't understand her feelings. She had gone through too much, and he couldn't comprehend it. But Treya noticed that Wendell's gaze was exactly the same as hers. Perhaps the boy had gone through even more, and this seemed very strange to the girl. Vilda agrees, but that is precisely why she believes in Wendell. He can handle anything, even a noble orc cannot harm him. That is his special power. Treya thinks the reason is silly, but sometimes such reasons turn out to be the most true. Standing up, Vilda says, Wendell will definitely come back. He promised to give a name. Besides, she wants him to have a little brother or sister someday. Treya suddenly gets upset. What does Wendell have to do with it? What do you mean, what does he have to do with it? When Dampier grows up, he should become a father, and to Vilda's child too. Treya is shocked by this statement. She leaves, wishing the girl a good night. On the way, she remembers that Bastia also said something similar, and then remembers how she made a good axe for her. Bastia, having received the weapon, promises to put it to good use and praises Treya's work. She says it is one of her best pieces. The girl lies down in bed and thinks about how the battle is going. Meanwhile, Bastia, holding that very axe in her hand, stands before a horde of orcs. And suddenly, the noble one appears among them. Noble orcs are 3-meter giants with light hair. Sam had heard about them. Dampier scouted the area with the help of a bone bird. He spotted 3 of them at once. One was almost here, another was with Sidiris' squad, and the third was moving toward the rescue squad. Bastia, standing next to Vigar, is surprised. But is that a bad thing? A noble orc is no match for the 2 of them. They could handle him somehow. But they had to wait for the orc to appear at Vigar's, and then defeat him with their combined. Could it be that? One of the nobles headed for the women. Then Wendell has no choice, to help Vigar or Sidiris. Are the orcs really stupid or just pretending? The situation is bad, and Dampier doesn't know what to do. The rescue squad is completely unprepared to fight the noble orc. They could take Vigar and go to Bastia's aid together, but then the entire vanguard would simply be crushed. That cannot be allowed to happen. Only by defeating the noble here will Wendell be able to advance to support the next squad. But will Bastia and the others be able to hold out until then? Most likely not. Dampier won't make it in time unless he leaves right now. The hero is confused, and so is Vigara. Meanwhile, Bugagan is busy with the hostage, who is actually an undead creature controlled by Life Ciliano. The orc orders the girl to be happy. He grants her the honor of becoming the mother of his 4th child. Luciliano does not understand how he became the favorite of the orc king. How long can this go on? For a man is pure torture. The Viscount and the Adventurers Guild will finish off his psyche for good. Suddenly, an orc bursts into Bugagan's chamber with a report. They are in trouble. Something has gone wrong. A horde of ghouls has broken into the village. The king is dissatisfied. Was it really worth disturbing him over some ghouls? Bugagan promises to come later and orders Bobobio and the others to deal with them. Luciliano hears all this. He mentally prays to the ghouls to try and kill his living dead in the process. In addition, he needs to report this to the Viscount. The orc returns to his task, and the man no longer understands if he ever plans to finish. He mentally cries out to anyone, "Stop this guy." Meanwhile, Basti chops down another orc with his axe, the last one. The ghouls have hardly expended any energy. She leads her squad to free the captives, after which they will move on to the next location. Entering the barn, she sees a horrific scene. Many women are hanging by their hands, others lie exhausted on the ground. Some have broken limbs. Among the captives, a human woman is suddenly discovered. Basti thinks, let them be enemies, but now everyone must be saved. She will leave that question to Wendell. At least now the woman has neither the strength nor the ability to attack Ghoulie. A deafening roar is heard outside. Orcs have arrived, and among them is Bubobio. Basti is confused. Where did this noble orc come from? The king's son smiles. His dim-witted brothers think only of killing as many enemies as possible. But if he returns his father's precious woman to him, he will rise above everyone else in his eyes. Besides, Bobobio thinks Basti is not bad looking and wants to take her with him. He orders the orcs not to harm her. The ghouls prepare for battle. The orcs rush straight at them. Suddenly, the orcs sense something behind them, but they see no one. The confused monsters look back, and at that moment, Sam's cart knocks them down and cuts them to pieces. Basti is amazed by Wendell's appearance. How did he even make it in time? Sam asks the hero what the secret is behind the thing that scared the orcs. It's a lemur, the magic of creating a familiar, which Zadiris taught him. Initially, it was a technique for long-range observation. It cannot attack directly, but at the moment of its disappearance, all creatures near the familiar sense the approach of death. If used in a blind spot, the enemy loses its vigilance. Suddenly, one of the orcs behind the cart comes to his senses. Basti warns about this, and Wendell orders Sam to reverse. This enrages Bubobio, who prepares to rush at the squad. Rita, Saria, and everyone else must deal with the surviving orcs, while Dampier and Basti deal with the noble. The elder's daughter is surprised. Do they really have to do this right now? The hero says that everything will be fine. He will help. But Basti does not believe that she can handle the noble orc, even with his support. However, this is only impossible because she has convinced herself of its impossibility. These words were once said to the hero by one of his mentors from his past life. The hero declares that everything will work out. He will never let Basti die. He promised. Bubobio rushes into the attack, and Basti has no choice but to agree and act. The orc approaches, but the girl suddenly freezes and does not understand how she ever expected to defeat him. She is afraid of dying right there. She imagines her flesh being cut in half. However, this does not happen. The monster's blow misses into thin air. Bubobio attacks again. The girl dodges. Blow after blow flies past. The monster is puzzled. Why can't he hit her? The girl herself does not understand how she manages to evade the noble orc's blows. Out of the corner of her eye, she notices Wendell. He is supporting her with his magic. This gives her strength. She intuitively senses where death will overtake her, and if she avoids those places, she will not die. She also senses when to strike. Of course, the power of the orc's blows is frightening, but with the skill she has, she is confident she can handle it. With a series of blows, the heroine attacks the orc, cuts off his arm, and then delivers the final blow directly to his head. The orc is defeated. She didn't think she would really be able to get the noble orc's head. Wendell approaches her and the girl asks what happened to Vigara. A little earlier, the man himself sent the boy to help Basti. If Dampier stays with him and joins the fight, Basti will already be dead by then. It's better to win without casualties. Wendell also thought about how to get to Basti as quickly as possible. In that case, Vigara would have to defeat the noble orc alone, which was perhaps entirely possible. Meanwhile, Vigara and Zediris entered the battle without Wendell's support. This means that the hero has the opportunity to participate directly in the battle. If Vigara and Zediris lose, the enemy army will rush in from that flank, and then all chances of victory will be lost. The sisters in armor are surprised by the boy's decision. After all, there is a risk of losing. Vigara believes that he and Zediris should fight without his help, but that's okay. Ghoul thought he shouldn't rely on a child, but now he's glad. With Wendell as their leader, the Ghouls are finally able to achieve results they can be proud of. Vigara enthusiastically sends Wendell away, adding that he himself has no time to waste. The hero apologizes and promises to return as soon as he has dealt with the orc on the other side. Vigara says there's no need to rush. He'll be done before the boy returns. The man stands alone with the noble orc. The latter attacks Ghoulie. Vigara and his squad stand opposite the orc, behind whom is a whole line of monsters. The noble attacks. Vigara dodges and tries to strike back, but the monster notices this and swings his sword in response. Ghoul steps aside. He is surprised. The monster is incredibly fast. After a powerful wide swing, the next blow followed almost instantly. The monster must have spent at least a moment regaining his balance. Vigara decides to change tactics. He swings his axe in a circle, but the orc parries with his own. The enemy is within Vigara's reach, and he decides to continue attacking him from a distance. Suddenly, the monster breaks through Ghouli's flurry of blows. He strikes him in the stomach and he flies backward. Another Ghoul from the squad shouts, calling Vigara, demanding that he get up, but he does not get up. The noble orc smiles. The strongest Ghoul warrior was nothing more than a light snack for him and fell with a single blow. The orc decides to finish him off and already swings his axe. At that, Zediris and another Ghoul stand in front of the third noble orc. She is amazed. Weren't the scouts supposed to stay focused? By Vigara. The elder addresses the Ghoulies from the squad. It is not safe here. Neither Vigara nor Wendell are nearby now. Zediris is confused. They don't have enough strength to win, but they can't escape either. The enemy has caught up with them. In the worst case scenario, the entire squad will be destroyed. Reflections. Zediris' thoughts are interrupted by a cat that flies past and lands on her arm. The girl recognizes it as the undead insect Wendell, with a thread trailing behind it. Suddenly, Zediris senses something and turning around sees an army of bone undead that has come to their aid. Thanks to the undead, Wendell has been monitoring the situation. Zediris tells Gulam, the king and Vigara are busy with their own affairs and cannot help, but if they turn their backs on the enemy now, everyone risks dying. Therefore, the elder suggests trying to defeat the noble orc with their own hands and meet their fate. One of the girls in the group thinks this is impossible. They will never be able to defeat such an orc, but Zediris interrupts her. If the ghouls still have the strength to fight, their enemies underestimate them, and the elder asks them to take advantage of this. She encourages her squad, asking them to show the orcs what the ghouls are capable of. Then the monsters will regret their decision to attack against them. The hero rushes into the attack. The noble orc Budibus says, some females have a strong will. Such women deserve his noble attention. He draws his bow and shoots an arrow into the shoulder of one of the ghouls. Zediris warns, be careful. The monster continues to shoot. The girls stop the arrows with magic. The orc thinks, their mana is not eternal, it is only a matter of time. Zediris deflects the arrows one after another, and this begins to annoy Budibus. Her mana should have run out long ago. But suddenly, he notices that not only the goblins, but also the orc warriors are almost defeated, and the power of the enemy's magic has not weakened at all. He is shocked. Where did they get so much mana for so many spells? It turns out that all this time, the girls have been fueled by Wendell's mana. Budibus loads his bow and prepares to use his powerful combat technique, one that cannot be countered with magic. At that moment, the bone undead behind him knocks one of the orcs off his feet. Budibus shoots an arrow at the monster, but it flies past, and the undead creature crashes down on him with all its might, knocking to the ground. The nobleman is frightened. He is bleeding and fears for his face. At that moment, the bone soldiers close in around him and begin to beat Budibus. He struggles to get up and starts to run, but Zediris does not let him go, slashing him with a great blade of wind. The magic cuts him in half. Zediris looks at his head, but cold. Sweat still pours down her back. She tells the insect that everything is fine, and the undead flies away. Nevertheless, it is too early for Guliam to relax. There are still enemies left. At this moment, Vigar regains consciousness and instantly dodges the orc's blow, then sinks his teeth into his neck. The monster screams in horror, screams in pain, but the ghoul does not let go until the orc grabs her by the mane and throws her away. Vigar rolls back, but notices a weapon in front of him, grabs it, and suddenly appears behind the monster. He uses a triple axe spin. The orc tries to parry, but the monster's axe shatters into pieces, and then Vigar delivers the final blow, cutting it down. Ghoul shouts Wendell at the top of his lungs. His family is strong. Meanwhile, Dampier is riding in a carriage with Emma and Bastia. He tells her that Vigar and Zediris have won. This has been confirmed. Undead and magic. They are both safe. Overjoyed, the girl picks him up in her arms. But victory has not yet been won, so Wendell asks her to let him go. Only father of the orcs. Sam notices the appearance of a fourth noble orc, Dampier. Also sees him. The monster is larger than the boy expected. He is completely unlike his sons. Is this what a true noble orc looks like? Looking at him, a message appears before Wendell. A threat of death has been detected. Death detected. The hero thinks, what if he starts the battle after waiting for Vigara and Zediris? Most likely he will win, but many will die. What if Wendell fights him alone while the others support him? There is a 50% chance that he himself will die, but the chances of losing someone else will drop to 10%. The hero jumps out of the cart and asks Basti to support him. Wendell rushes ahead of the cart and stops right in front of the noble orc. Seeing a small child in front of him, the orc is momentarily confused, but immediately attacks. Spikes grow out of the ground in front of the monster, stretching from below toward Wendell. The hero activates Shield, which breaks the orc's attack. Running up close, the Orc King swings his sword and pierces the boy's shield, but the weapon gets stuck. Noticing this, the orc pulls out his sword and retreats. Wendell forms a huge mass of. From afar, Zediris sees him and rushes to the boy on horseback. This cluster turns out to be a mana bullet, and a very large one at that. In all her training, the girl has never seen anything like it. The hero knows how to surprise. He launches it at the orc, but he dodges it. Then Dampier creates many balls and simultaneously releases them at the monster. At the same time, a lemur appears behind the orc. The king is frightened. He turns around sharply, but only cuts the air with his sword. The orc is surrounded by balls, and Wendell calls on an earth golem to rise from the ground. However, it does not have time to get to its feet. The orc crushes it with a jump. The king begins, fighting off Wendell's spheres. Out of breath, the orc notices that the boy is already creating another huge sphere. It flies at the orc. He deflects it and pierces the boy's shield with his sword again. The blade barely reaches Wendell's face. The orc pulls out his weapon and, stepping back slightly, looks intently at Dampier's impassive face. At that moment, the boy feverishly thinks about the fight. It's dangerous. Could he really die today? Lemurs, golems, mana bullets, nothing works on the monster. He really is the father of all these worthless offspring. Even a mana bullet at maximum power did nothing. Why is this orc so strong? He trained, but what's the point? If he still can't defeat him, what should he do? Maybe poison the orc? It's come to extreme measures. But how? Inflict a wound and pour poison into it? Impossible. At that very moment, the orc was also thinking feverishly about Wendell. This child had not shown a single emotion throughout the entire battle. Who was he anyway? His magic deflected every sword the orc wielded. There was no fear on his face, nothing at all. The crosscut proved useless against the child's shield. The orc doesn't even know if he will come out alive. He hasn't seen such a completely empty gaze in a long time. Both are thinking the same thing. At this rate, Vigara doesn't understand why Wendell is dragging his feet against such a strong opponent. Zadiris says that the boy is barely holding on. Vigar disagrees. He hasn't even broken a sweat. It's clear that the noble orc is about to exhaust his strength and be defeated. Zadiris calls Vigar naive. Hasn't he noticed that the enemy is deflecting all of Wendell's magical attacks? The boy can't attack with anything but mana bullets. Sam joins the argument, asking everyone to calm down. They need to hurry and help. The gentleman. The cart is rushing at full speed toward the noble orc. Zadiris orders the mages and archers to prepare for attack. The ghouls simultaneously attack the orc, who instantly deflects everything. Wendell notices that everyone is coming to his aid. This is bad. They have gathered too early for the final blow. While the orc is focused on the boy, but if he changes his target, few will survive. Perhaps the hero will be able to keep them in this world in spirit form. The undead will survive any damage to their bodies, and Dampier will restore it. But what if the orc's sword can cut through even spiritual forms? How can this guy be killed? All attacks have proven useless, and suddenly, unexpectedly, the hero finds the answer. Something that cannot be dodged or defended against. In a rage, the orc swings his sword again and lunges at the hero. His shield shattered into pieces, and the king cut Dampier down. Ghoulie, Sam, the sisters, and Darcy see this and freeze in horror. The hero falls to the ground, and the orc grins and licks the boy's blood from his face. The boy's blood. But at that moment, the king's legs buckle, and he collapses next to Wendell's body. Wendell! The ghouls rush towards them. Igara swings for a blow, but sees that the orc is convulsing, foam coming from his mouth. Zadiris kneels in front of the boy and asks him not to move, promising to help him right away. Wendell coughs up blood. Bastia is hysterical, unable to understand what happened, and asks her mother if he will be okay. The elder orders her daughter not to interfere and sends her away. The boy mentally addresses his soldiers. He just coughed up blood that had gotten into his trachea. In a couple of minutes, he will be able to speak again. Sam understands what has happened, and the sisters in armor breathe a sigh of relief. Bastia explains. At the moment of impact, Wendell used a transformation into a spiritual form. He turned his heart and spine into spirit. His life is not in danger now, and the wound will heal in a few minutes. At this, the orc must be finished off, and care must be taken not to touch the boy's blood. Igar suddenly starts coughing, his body suddenly becoming heavy. Sam demands, urgently, to help the man with detoxification magic. One of the girls comes to his aid, and Zadiris asks for an explanation of what happened. When Wendell was cut, he turned some of his blood into a deadly poison, swallowed it. Convulsions in the limbs, blurred vision, loss of consciousness, and a heart attack. The noble orc could not withstand the effects of the poison, fell to his knees, and then to the ground. Zadiris considers this reckless. When Wendell comes to, they will have a serious conversation. At this moment, Darcy is in tears, overcome with anxiety. After a while, the hero comes to his senses. Zadiris says that before returning home, they need to solve one more problem. She wants to console with him about the captive human women and asks him to take a look. While the ghouls are busy, a living dead man, controlled by Luciano, sits on the ground. He recalls. Sometime after the king's departure, the sounds of battle subsided, and the ghouls followed him. The ghouls appeared. The ground outside is littered with the bodies of orcs, kobolds, and goblins, but he did not see a single ghoul corpse. Incredible, they defeated the orcs with almost no losses. Moreover, the ghoul who came for the girl asked the king to wait. The king, who was able to supply them with equipment superior to that of ordinary soldiers. He even defeated a 7th rank monster in single combat. Luciliano imagines that this must be a huge and powerful ghoul. If his living dead is destroyed, he will refuse this task, even if he has to beg on his knees. Luciliano will never go into battle against 100 fighters under the command of such a king. What will happen to the adventurous girls now? Will they be allowed to eat, or will they undergo a ritual to turn them into ghouls? In any case, it is no longer possible. Even if people come to their aid, the fate of women raped by orcs is unenviable. They have been deeply wounded, not only physically, but also emotionally. Even those who manage to recover will face discrimination as people who have been with monsters. In such a case, it would be better to be eaten by ghouls. Here and now, Luciano notices a small child appearing in front of his corpse, multicolored eyes, a dhampir. Could this be the king himself? Wendell asks, what is he doing on someone else's body? Luciano is shocked. He asks what this body is then, and the hero replies, the spirit of this woman is next to him, is the spirit of this woman. She demands that the body be returned and that its desecration be stopped. Luciano is frightened. The man does not understand how the boy can see ghosts. A necromancer? Luciano could not have imagined that the soul of this body was haunting him. He is about to leave, but Wendell says, it's not that simple. Luciano cannot get out of the girl's body. The boy is holding him, grip around his throat, and demands an answer. What is he doing in her body? The man says, he is a traveler. He came here to scout the orc village and use this body to achieve his goal. He was hired by a viscount who proposed this plan to Minister Palpapek. To deal with the orcs, the minister intends to send an army here. But if Palpapek finds out that the village no longer exists, will he change his mind? Luciano isn't sure about that. He'll just switch his focus to the ghouls. He's talking about all the demonic creatures that live here. He won't change his plan. Moreover, it is the ghouls who are responsible for the death of the noble orcs, which means that from the human's point of view, such an army is too dangerous. The man says that threatening him is pointless. He is just a traveler and has no influence. The hero thinks, what to do? If it becomes known that dhampir is here, there will be problems. You can't kill him with this skill either. The boy says, now he understands why he needed this body. It turns out that Luciliano also killed her. The man says in horror that this is not so. The landowner gave him this corpse. He has nothing to do to her death. The girl's soul demands again, enough, return the body. Wendell says he will let the man go, but only this once. His hand loosens, his grip on his throat, and Luciano leaves the body. Wendell touches the corpse and discovers that the girl is still alive. It seems that she will remain in a semi-dead state until her mana runs out. The girl's spirit thanks the boy. She has regained her body, but it seems that she is dying, which means her path lies in heaven. Wendell offers her to be reborn right here. The girl is delighted with this idea. Can he really bring her back to life? But the hero corrects her. Not quite. Right now, a new life is growing inside her. The girl is pregnant. Will she be reborn as an orc? She says, it's better to die right now. Wendell asks her to calm down. He will suppress the noble orc's genes as much as he can, so she will not become a monster. But she won't be a full-fledged human either. The boy suggests creating an appearance so close to human that it will be impossible to mistake her for a monster. The girl thinks about it. She accepts and asks to be reborn. The hero promises to do everything in his power. One of the sisters in armor carefully takes the girl's body and carries it to the carriage. Sam asks why the young gentleman so kind to her. Wendell calls it an experiment. He wanted to see if it was possible to place a soul in an embryo. The experiment was a success. Now her soul is inside the child in her womb. Sam assumes that the boy wants to use this method with Mrs. Darcy, but that's not the case. In this case, the girl is transferring into her child, so the compatibility with the embryo is high. Finding a compatible embryo without the mother herself is an almost impossible task, but Wendell has other ideas. The boy considers what is happening to be very hypocritical on his part. Since he offered her this, he will have to support the girl at first. Sam is very worried. His master will have to raise a child at such a young age. Sometime later, in the village of Basti, Darcy's soul scolds Wendell for fighting the enemy leader. It was, too, dangerous, and the girls unanimously ask him never to do it again. Wendella apologizes. Darcy says that even though he did it for the sake of everyone's safety, he still asks him never to do it again. Basti believes that their own powerlessness also contributed to this, and apologizes that he had to work so hard. Zadiris says it's their fault. Wendell is indignant. What are they talking about? Did they want him to relax so they could pounce on him again? Zadiris promises no. The hero is surprised. Usually, they yell at him much louder. They scolded and punished him much more harshly than this every time, long and painfully. Darcy apologizes to his son for scaring him. Zadiris asks, What kind of parents did he have? She didn't know he took it so badly. It seems they unwittingly brought back something terrible for Wendell. The hero says they misunderstood him. He wasn't talking about his mother. Darcy asks him not to worry. The girls can't see her anyway. But it's important to the hero. If his friends have the wrong impression of his mother, it means he didn't explain himself well. He says he wants to tell them something about Darcy and himself. But first, he wants to call Vergara. The man arrives just in time and turns out to be incredibly huge. That's how he woke up today. After yesterday's battle, he rose to the 6th rank. Now he is a ghoul berserk. After a while, Wendell tells them how he was reborn from a completely different world. The ghouls accept this calmly. The boy is surprised. Did they believe him so easily? Zadira says that it is unusual for a 2-year-old child to possess such magic and knowledge. Considering that all this came from his past life, everything falls into place. They have known him for too long to be surprised. But is it true that 100 more people like the hero will come into this world? 100 children with magic reserves exceeding 100 million. The ghouls are clearly no match for them. Wendell is sure that his mana is much higher than theirs. He has so much of it precisely because he has not acquired any special skills. The ghouls exhale, then everything will be fine. But the hero doesn't think so. All these children have cheater abilities. What if they show up in a crowd? Vergara declares, their abilities do not make them immortal. That means there is a way to kill them. Wendell wants to object, but suddenly remembers, when they first died, God said they would be reborn in random worlds. This clearly means that there are no immortals. If they didn't die, they would never have ended up here. It makes sense. How did he not think of that before? Zadira says that the boy, like everyone else, tends to fear those who possess something he cannot have, especially if he has already been killed once. But he has a weapon that no one else has, an unbeatable weapon. Darcy agrees. That's why her son needs to believe in himself more. Wendell smiles and thanks his friends. It is thanks to them that he has found hope. Suddenly, the boy interrupts the touching moment and announces that people are coming here with the army and will arrive shortly. Meanwhile, somewhere in the city, the Minister of War sits at a desk in his office and writes something. A bat hangs by the window and says that it looks rather dreary. Thomas Paul Puppick, the Minister of War, spends his short life on such a boring activity. The bat really feels a little sorry for him. The minister asks his immortal friend to do him a favor. The bat laughs. Hasn't he already helped him enough? That chair should have gone to his older brother. Who took care of Thomas? Thomas remarks, that's all the vampire's leniency. He helped because they have a common goal. The vampire agrees. Having an ally of his rank is a significant advantage. The minister asks to set aside formalities and gets down to business. A vampire named Wendell. Thomas explains to the bat. He is a 3-year-old child born to a dark elf executed in his country and a vampire who was once subordinate to the bat. The beast says that this is the son of the trader Valen and recalls that he remained silent until the very end. The elf's name was Darcy and the vampire's was Valen. It is common practice to form a child's name from the names of their parents, which explains the name of this Dhampir. It turns out that this child is a necromancer who controls an army of souls. The vampire does not believe that a 2-year-old toddler is capable of such a thing. Nevertheless, the information has been verified. The minister received it from a traveling familiar. Valina did not have such abilities. The vampire hopes that the child will be caught soon. Thomas agrees. An expedition will soon be sent out, including High Priest Golden and Riley, nicknamed Windspear. The latter earned his nickname thanks to his mentor, Zirang Hines. But will he be of any use? Thomas says he is already rank B and suggests that the vampire go too, since he is worried. The vampire laughs and says he trusts the minister. More importantly, Thomas must report on the investigation. The man recalls the incident with the golem at the city gates. He wonders, could Wendell have been involved in this? The vampire suddenly says, don't be silly. People are so afraid of Dhampirs that they constantly attribute superpowers to them. A Dhampir's abilities depend on the strength of the vampire who created them. A child couldn't have gained any serious abilities from someone as insignificant as Valen. The minister says, these are just his guesses, but they do sound ridiculous. The vampire is about to fly away. Even immortals shouldn't waste their time. But if the child is really involved in this incident, neither the high priest nor Riley should underestimate him. Sometime later, the residents of the village of Ghouls gathered in the forest. The girls who had been held captive by the orcs arrived. Wendell asks if they really agree to become ghouls. In despair, they say that they have already made up their minds and ask for the transformation to be carried out as soon as possible. Zadiris asks the boy to simply grant their wish. These women cannot return to human society anyway. The only way to help them is to accept them into the tribe as equals. Wendell agrees, and one of the girls walks into the pond and submerges herself. Dampier watches and suddenly begins to have doubts. What if something goes wrong? From the outside, it looks as if the girl has simply decided to drown herself. Zadiris assures him that everything is fine. This ritual has been passed down from generation to generation. However, it only works with humans. Representatives of other races simply drown. Wendell remembers that Treya went through this too, and asks Vilda where she is. She replies that Treya didn't come. She was turned by force. She probably didn't want to watch it. Vilda goes to check on the girl, and Zadiris sends Wendell with her. The heroes leave. The elder is pleased. Vilda is learning to understand people. In the past, the ghoulie always shunned strangers, but perhaps there is nothing wrong with them. The heroes stand in front of Treya's hut and say they have come to see her. Upon entering, Dampier smells blood and sees the freshly severed head of a noble orc. Treya hugs the monster's paw and says that the meat of noble orcs is incredibly fragrant. Noticing Ghoulia and the boy, the girl asks what they want. Wendell, seeing this scene, says that it would be better for them to leave so as not to distract her. Later, Wendell and Ghoulia sit by the fire. Dampier announces that an army of humans is moving in to kill them all. Somewhere in the mountains, the human army is advancing in 3 columns. The spear of the green wind from the 5 colored swords addresses the high priest. He says they are not as soft as Heinz. This time, it's all about him. The priest tells the young man, do what he wants. But the descendant of an evil vampire and a witch must die. However, they must remain vigilant. Even knowing that people were following them, the ghouls did not leave their lair for 2 months. This means that all this time they have been building up their fighting power. They should not be underestimated. The guy thanks the priest for the warning. He wonders, who will die? For him, this is just another step on the way to surpassing Heinz. The people arrive at the settlement where there is no trace of the ghouls. Everywhere they go, it is empty. One of the soldiers notices some tracks. There are wheel tracks, as if a dozen carts had passed through here at once. Riley indignantly asked the soldiers, how could they not have noticed anyone if they had been following the ghouls for 2 months? No one could have imagined that they would move across the mountain range. Priest Golden believes they were led astray. A horde of several hundred ghouls, led by a Dampier, could not have disappeared without a single clash. 2 months ago, the ghouls decide what to do with the humans. Vegara suggests attacking. The ghouls have grown stronger and will not lose, even against 100 soldiers. Wendell disagrees. They have indeed become stronger, but humans are different from orcs. They have carefully prepared themselves specifically to defeat the ghouls. Even if the ghouls manage to repel the first attack, eventually the scales will tip in the other direction. Besides, there are people in the village who need to be protected. The elder agrees with the boy. Treya believes it is better to retreat in order to save lives. But what to do? Hiding is not an option. However, Wendell knows where they can go, though it is not a short journey. 3 months later, in the mountains, a long line of carts led by Sam moves along the road. Dampier uses magic to clear a path right through the stone walls. Finally, Zadiris wonders, will they be able to settle here without incident? Apparently, there are quite a few undead here. Wendell suggests conducting a serious reconnaissance the next day, and for now, setting up camp in different places. The boy catches his breath. Strangely enough, the mountain range turns out to be nothing special. In Treya's cave, Zadiris and Wendell warm themselves by the fire. A girl sits on the ground nearby, one of those rescued from orc captivity. The boy Treya smiles. From the outside, they look like a family. Treya asks Katia if she is glad she joined them. The girl says it's better than being a woman that monsters have fun with. Besides, Katia turns to leave, but Wendell suddenly tells her that this is not true. She does have a family. Then a bone thrown by the little monsters hits him in the back of the head. Monsters. Then, a woman appears and scolds the children for their behavior. Zadiris thinks about it. While these children were in the womb, they drew on Wendell's magical power to sustain their bodies. Compared to ordinary monster cubs, these children are much smarter. So many were born that the boy now has a large family. Somewhere in the city, Minister Thomas tells the bat, there are no traces of the Dampier. Furthermore, there are no adventurers capable of crossing the ridge and destroying several hundred monsters. The vampire suggests calling Golden, but that is impossible too. Although he would like to follow the vampire, the temple has given him another task, and he is left immediately. The vampire is nervous. Thomas asks, is it really such a big problem for the vampire to cross the mountains himself? The bat freaks out and flies away. Wendell, along with Zadiris, Katia, Sam, and his two sisters, examine the huge building. Sam notices that the boy is clearly excited about something. The hero asks, aren't they overwhelmed with curiosity about these abandoned ruins? Don't they think about how well they will live here? Katia says she doesn't see any particular problems, except maybe a scary ghost showing up. Sudden dinosaurs. Above them, pterosaurs dive down, and a shark leaps out of the water. The ghouls are surrounded. The boy frantically thinks about what to do. In his homeworld, dinosaurs are completely extinct. Only fossils remain in museums. And now they are moving straight towards him. Killing them now means they will die out forever. Wendell decides to spare them and turn them into undead creatures. While the boy is thinking, Katia takes out her sword and cuts down one of the dinosaurs. A bone bird appears and attacks the pterosaur. The sisters finish off the shark with their spears. The battle is over, but Zadiris is dissatisfied with the result. The ghouls reacted too slowly. She suddenly notices Wendell sitting in front of the dinosaur. He is clearly upset that they were unable to stop them without suffering any damage. The goblins do not understand his frustration. The boy explains that these are creatures from a long-gone era called dinosaurs. He recalls once visiting a museum where he was captivated by an exhibition of skeletons, and since then, they have been his long-held dream. In elementary school, he had a chance to go on a long-awaited trip to the museum, but his uncle wouldn't let him. Wendell suddenly has an idea: to collect bones and start his own museum. Zadiris doesn't understand, but agrees with the boy. The heroes return and hear a blood-curdling scream. They see someone coming out of the building. A huge figure appears before the ghouls, who tells Wendell that he has been waiting for the children from the prophecy to appear. The strange man with the appearance of the undead notices Wendell and calls him the child from the prophecy. It is remarkable that the boy has come to them in. Talisheim, the undead, introduces himself as Richie Noaz and asks for help, which greatly surprises the hero. The boy responds by telling him his name. Noaz. It said, forgotten children will come from the west together with a white child. He will bring prosperity and glory. However, then it was formerly called Law, the capital of the sun. Wendell asks, did the land of giants and the state of shields really go to war? Noaz explains, for a time they lived without conflict, until one day, without warning, Milk's army crossed the mountains and approached Talisheim. The giants fought desperately. For the first hour, they had the upper hand, but they couldn't hold out. In that battle, Noaz lost his life and became undead. But if the man knows all this, then the story must be well known. Wendell asks, why did the country of the shield attack the country of the giants? It happened because Milk, the feudal lord of the shield state, was following orders from the Amida Empire. While the country was building up its power for the empire got scared that their relationship would change. Thus, the conflict with the country of giants was supposed to undermine this power. For a long time, the Amida Empire had professed faith in the god Alda, while the country of giants had professed faith in the goddess of life. So, religious differences became the official pretext. Noaz himself would like to know this. He is curious. What happened to the state that destroyed the land of giants? Sam says that the shield state was considered the victor. However, it could not openly celebrate. Starting with the hero of the shield country, Michael, many outstanding officers and soldiers had died. By the end of the war, the costs were enormous. Moreover, unlike the country of giants, all the money and resources seemed to have evaporated, as if someone had taken them. Richie interrupts Sam. He says that the claim that there was nothing of value in the land of giants is not entirely true. At the very beginning of the battle, the first princess fled the country under the protection of the guard. All the jewels and property were taken with her. The kingdom of Olbom in the east, where the princess fled, was thriving at that time thanks to trade. After all, the countless treasures from Talisheim were prized in all countries. In any case, the losses of the state of Milk were enormous. So everything went exactly as the Amida Empire had planned. But Sam says that's not quite true. It was the Amida Empire that suffered the heaviest blow. The kingdom of Olbom, friendly to the state of giants, gathered an army. They deservedly punished the state of Milk, which had treacherously attacked its ally. Exhausted by the battle with the giants, Milk's borders were easily overcome. The Amida Empire, confused, threw its army into defense of the Shield State, and was defeated. Since then, the Empire has been losing land to Olbom, and in order to win it back, these countries have been in conflict for 200 years. It turns out that the ancient battle was just one link in a chain of events that continues to this day. That is why this story has gone down in history as the greatest defeat of the Amida Empire. Nuaz suddenly laughs and rejoices at this news. Nevertheless, things are not going well for the states of the Milky Shield and the Amida Empire. Wendell thinks to himself, it would be good if they disappeared altogether. And Richie laughs at such boldness. Undoubtedly, the boy is the reincarnation of the true ancestor of vampires from a legend passed down from generation to generation. Born from the union of the goddess of life and the hero Zakat, the ancestor of vampires predicted on his deathbed that after his death he would be reborn. He would rise with his brothers and sisters and bring destruction to the arrogant apostles of the deity. In other words, Wendell is the white child from the prophecy, and at the same time, the second coming of the son of the goddess and hero from the legend. The boy is confused. Why is Richie mixing up legend and prophecy? No one has mentioned the destruction of the Shield State. Suddenly, Darcy appears and asks her son to remain impartial. After all, not all the people of the state of Milk are bad. Richie says his people have harbored resentment toward the states of Milk and Amida for 200 years. But the goddess has commanded him not to stir up hatred toward their descendants, so he wants to put an end to it. Finally, Wendell asks the giant directly, what exactly should he do? For the man, the very arrival of the child from the prophecy was the fulfillment of his desire. They need nothing else. The boy says he has brought about 600 Ghouls with him. Would Richie mind if they all moved to Talasheim? The giant smiles and turning to the ruins asks, is there even one among the dead who would oppose the arrival of the child's ghouls? Immediately, a crowd of undead appears, all rejoicing and promising to warmly welcome the child and his companions. Wendell thanks Noaz for his help. He is glad that he managed to get permission from the representative. Richie suddenly clarifies, he is not a representative, but only a humble apprentice priest. He just happened to be the first to speak to the boy. Then, the hero wants to talk to the real representative of the country, but since the first princess fled, there are no members of the ruling family left here. However, one of the heroes of Talasheim, Borks, still guards the royal castle to this day. Noaz offers to escort Wendell and asks him to follow him. Nuaz and Wendell go to see Borks. The boy asks, what kind of person is this hero? Borks is a master swordsman, capable of defeating any powerful enemy with his blade alone. Among the heroes of Talasheim, he is the only one who has turned into a dead man. It can be said that he is the strongest of the existing undead giants. In 200 years, Borks has never left the throne room. Finally, the hero finds himself before the huge giant. Bork asks, what kind of strange child did this novice bring here? Richie explains that this is Wendell, king of the Ghouls, the very child from the prophecy. Borkus is not interested in who the boy is or what he does. If they want to live here, he has no objection. Wendell declares that he and the Ghouls would like to become friends with the giants, for which they need to gather everyone together. Borkus refuses. He already has enough to do. Besides, the boy has almost subjugated him with his charm, but it is useless. It turns out that the charm of death has no effect at all. When the level of undead is so high, the charm skill is not only useless, it causes suspicion. Then Wendell has no choice but to negotiate in the usual way. To anger Borks is to risk one's life, so one must choose one's words carefully. Wendell apologizes for using the skill. It acts constantly, without his will. Besides, the art, known as necromancy in this world, did not exist before. Perhaps if Borks uses it, he will get what he has long desired. The giant thinks. Wendell offers a deal and asks if it is possible for him to remove the magical curse from the legend. The boy thinks. Most likely, he will be able to remove it. Richie is amazed. Neither the high priest nor even the holy healer Gina were able to cleanse him. What will happen if the children are cursed? Wendell explains. A curse is a special state caused by magic. His necromancy is capable of absorbing and destroying magic. No matter how powerful the curse is, once the magic that created it is destroyed, the curse will be lifted. In other words, one only needs to find the structure of the curse and a way to eliminate it. In the past world, during experiments, this was called searching for the root cause. There is nothing complicated about necromancy here. But will Borks believe everything else? The giant thinks for a moment. Suddenly, Borks kneels before the boy and leans on his sword. If Wendell removes the curse and brings everyone back, he is ready to become his companion, or even his last servant. The giant swears by his name as master of the sword and asks him to save his companion, Gina of Andeo. The hero looks at Borks and agrees to help. Borks invites Wendell inside and opens the doors leading to a huge hall. In the center stands an ice crystal. Someone's hand is visible through it. The hero says he can melt the ice with his magic, but first he wants to know what is here. Borks agrees, and Nuaz decides to first tell about the heroes and their confrontation with the hero of the state of Shield, Michael. Once upon a time, there were 5 famous heroes in Talishheim: the Swordmaster Borks, the Holy Healer Gina, the Hungry Wolf Okban, the Little Genius from Andeo Zandia, and Balgan. Thanks to their stubborn resistance, Talishheim stopped the advance of the armies of the Shield State of Milk. But the enemy also had its own hero, the adventurer Oranga, the divine Spear of Ice Michael. His appearance in the second battle tipped the scales in favor of the Shield State. His magical spear Ice Age was the treasure of the Shield State, forged by the god of ice together with the goddess of water and knowledge, especially for such brave warriors. Heroes fell one after another from this legendary artifact. It was here, in this very place, that Gina and Zandia from Andeo struck Michael. Borks and Gina were ranked A, while Zandia was ranked B, but with the potential to reach C. Michael was of the same rank as the giant, and he thought he would defeat him. When Borks realized he had been killed, he was already undead. He himself did not know what was hidden in the ice, and could do nothing with the block, neither break it nor melt it. But the boy can do it, and Borks asks him to take action. He doesn't know what happened to his friends, but he must ask them for forgiveness. Wendell is already finishing melting the ice. The hero has not found a single soul nearby who resembles Gina or Zandia from Andeo. The boy takes the hand lying in the ice and tries to read its memories. Wendell sees the battle between Bork and Michael. Behind them sits the wounded Gina. Borkus rushes into the attack, but his sword breaks in half. Michael promises to finish off the heroes in the name of the goddess, and kills them. The boy believes that they died before they could descend after Michael. Borks will only learn the truth if he goes down. They descend together, Wendell, Borks, and Richie. The boy carries the severed wrist with him. The giant thinks, perhaps they will find the bodies of his friends. If so, that is already a reward. It is worth trying for that, and if the bodies of Gina and Zandia are found, Wendell will be able to raise them with his will and bring them back as undead. If they succeed, Borks promises to make them the boy's wives. To the boy. Wendell freezes, while Richie is delighted with the idea. Zandia is the second princess of Talishheim, and Gina is the high priestess of the Temple of Vida. The union of the two girls and the child of prophecy will undoubtedly bring prosperity and glory. Wendell believes that this is not a reward, but a marriage of convenience. Besides, no matter how beautiful the girls were before, they are now giants and most likely look like skeletons. Sam says that friends should not make such decisions for girls. Richie believes that there is no problem. The child will become the savior of Talishheim, the one who will overthrow the god Arth and his followers, so no one will object to such an outcome. The boy objects again. The prophecy about the descendants of vampires and the legend about the child are two different things, but explaining this to Noaz seems pointless. Bork suddenly notices another ice block at the end of the corridor, behind which a dragon golem can be glimpsed. Wendell decides they must stop. If they melt the ice, everyone there will be destroyed. The hero asks Noaz, what exactly is there? It is a dragon golem, a guardian created by the goddess of life herself to protect her treasure. Apparently, Michael went so far as to destroy the treasures. However, he was stopped by the dragon golem and returned empty-handed. From Sam's story earlier, we learn that Michael returned from the battle seriously wounded and soon died. It turns out that it was the dragon that killed him. Richie asks the boy, what if Gina and Zandia are inside? Wendell thinks, even if they turn into undead creatures, the golem most likely destroyed them long ago. Borkus declares that if they are dead, at least their bodies can be found, and if not, then we can recreate them using the goddess's treasure. Wendell is surprised. Can this treasure really be used to recreate a body? Borks explains, the treasure is a device for resurrecting the dead. The goddess created it long ago. The device is imperfect. It cannot resurrect the soul. Wendell asks, Is there a way to get inside without being hit by the golem? But only the ruler of the country knew that, and he has long been dead. It turns out that the hero's only option is to become stronger and defeat the golem. The boy asks for permission to use the device, because he has someone he wants to bring back to life. The heroes begin to discuss. Their opponent is a monster that defeated Michael himself. Ordinary methods will not work. They need to prepare and seriously increase their combat power. Bork asks Noaz, are there any working magical artifacts and weapons left? Almost everything of value was taken away during the first princess's escape, and what remained was taken by the Shield State. There is nothing to be done. We will have to search for artifacts in the dungeon. All of the Adventurers Guild equipment had also been stolen. Only the career change department remained intact. Wendell suddenly asks, can he and Ghoulie use it? Nuaz thinks about it. It can be used regardless of race, but there have been no cases of monsters using it, let alone a child. The boy thinks, in the human world, goblins are considered monsters, but Sedirus said that their new race traces its origins back to the goddess of life. Perhaps the profession change will work, or maybe, because of the ban imposed on Wendell by a certain Rodcart which prevents him from learning new skills, nothing will come of it. Bork says that the broken sword doesn't bother him, but the golem wounded his right hand, so fighting will be difficult. Wendell says he can help with that. Gradually grow a new arm using magic. Borkis is delighted, and the hero asks to leave for a moment to talk to his companions. To tell the truth, he didn't think he would get so much information. Wendell just wanted to see how everything worked and figure out if they could settle here. The hero thinks they can. Besides, he befriended Borks and learned about the resurrection of the dead and the career change department. Defeating the dragon golem won't be easy, but together it no longer seems impossible. The boy can't wait to share the news with everyone. He enters the house. Wilder is lying on the bed, with Sedirus standing nearby. It turns out that the girl has gone into labor. Vilda's labor has started earlier than the hero expected. He doesn't think her health is in danger, but this is her first child, and the process could take a long time. Sam and his daughters are watching from the boy's window. Sedirus says that if something goes wrong, they would like to enlist Wendell's support. In addition, Vilda wants the hero to take her hand. He freezes. Does this mean he is both a doctor and a husband? He tells Vilda that everything will be fine, not to worry, although he himself is worried, because there are no guarantees. Sedirus and another girl, Ghoul, help Vilda and tell her what to do. Suddenly, the hero senses the presence of death, but it does not come from Vilda, but from the embryo in her. Belly. He decides to check on its condition and plunges his hand inside the girl's body, and he sees the umbilical cord is wrapped around the child's neck. Wendell fixes the problem. It was dangerous. If he had delayed even a little, the umbilical cord would have strangled the child. 6 hours later, Vilda gives birth to a healthy baby girl. The girl asks Wendell to give the newborn half of his name, and the hero agrees. Holding the child in his arms, he promises to do everything to protect her, even though she is not his child. King Ghoulie. Everyone around rejoices at the arrival of the new Ghoulie. Nuaz appears and also congratulates Vilda, frightening everyone present. However, Richie is happy. New life has finally appeared in the ruins of this castle. Borkus enters the room, also congratulates them, and asks to see the baby. Wendell uses the magic of death and disinfection on the undead and asks them not to come close to the child. After all, they are zombies. After a while, everyone celebrates and drinks in honor of the child's birth. Sedirus and Wendell discuss the news that the boy has learned. Suddenly, the elder says, the hero is forbidden to work until his next birthday. The ghouls have entrusted him with too many tasks. Wendell has been under too much stress lately. Sometimes, the body needs rest. The boy objects. He is not that tired, and besides, he still plans to resurrect his mother. But Sedirus believes that if something happens to their master, everything will be worse for everyone. She understands his feelings, but it is easy to make a mistake in a hurry. Darcy appears and agrees with her. She asks her son to get some proper rest, and if he doesn't listen, she threatens to return him to the cycle of rebirth. The hero wonders what to do on vacation. Eating and sleeping all day is unhealthy, and his birthday is still far away. How can he kill time? Suddenly, Vigara pulls the boy out of the water by his head. It turns out that they are both sitting in a hot tub. The man was afraid that Wendell was drowning, so he grabbed him. The boy tells Vigar about his experiences, but Vigar can't help him and advises him to ask someone else. Then the hero turns to Katya and Richie for advice, but they can't offer anything useful. While thinking, the boy stumbles upon a guild of adventurers, inside which he finds a huge number of books. The hero sits down to read. In the morning, he decides to do something else. On the street, he sees his bone monkeys playing and training at the same time. A bone man sits aside and is sad about his rank. He feels that he is lagging behind his comrades. Rita and Saria appear and confirm that yes, they started training at the same time as him, but now they have become stronger. Wendell asks him not to be upset. He is still a good guy. Usually, an animal soul placed in a human body produces a weak undead of the first or second rank. This is because four-legged creatures cannot walk on two legs and cannot use their hands. But this skeleton, even though it used to be a mouse, knows how to use a sword, a shield, and a bow and arrow. By undead standards, it's a real genius. And yet the skeleton wants to become stronger. Wendell suddenly decides to test something interesting he found in a book about undead creatures. He wants to put another soul into the skeleton's body. It will be a soul that has lost its ego, which means that the skeleton's personality will not disappear. The soul will be human, and with its help, the skeleton will fill the gap in controlling the human body. Fortunately, there is a battlefield nearby where the souls of fallen warriors can be collected, and Wendell begins to move with the help of magic. Suddenly, the skeleton says that thanks to its master's work, it has risen to the 4th rank. The boy is amazed. Has the human soul really taken control of the body? He asks the skeleton if it remembers anything from its past life. The skeleton replies that he clearly remembers having a wife and a newborn child. They barely made ends meet, but they were happy until one day. The hero returned home, and something ambushed him. An unknown beast tormented him, threw him from side to side, and then ate his wife and children. Although it had eaten its fill, it decided to play with the hero. It turned out to be an ordinary cat. Wendell notices that the skeleton's voice has changed, but its character remains the same as it was when it was still a mouse. Mouse, the boy, asks the skeleton not to kill stray cats, and then gives him a huge stone wheel for training, inside which he runs. Time passes. Wendell plays with the children, reads books, tells Gulya about games. Finally, the hero's birthday arrives. All his friends gather together to congratulate him. Dinosaur skeletons stand around them. The ghouls learned that Wendell dreamed of these creatures and collected them for him. The two violent ones had to be subdued, but they left one calm triceratops, and the boy is delighted. Darcy smiles and rejoices. Her son is now 3 years old. The hero thanks all his friends and his mother. Meanwhile, somewhere in the castle, the vampires gathered around a table to discuss the punishment of the Dampier.